Good evening, I'm Jennifer Griswold. School districts across eastern Nebraska and western Iowa are getting ready for a new school year. While they're facing the usual challenges, some districts are also dealing with ongoing recovery from the March floods. Reporter Phil Bergman has more from Fremont County.
Ready, set, hut.
On a humid Monday afternoon, the Fremont Mills football team hit the practice field for the first time in 2019. School is right around the corner.
Oh yeah, for sure. Been waiting for a while.
Inside, the school's empty. Teachers are putting the final touch-ups on their classrooms.
I'm really not quite ready, but I will be when the 20th hits.
Stephanie Shaw spent more than 30 years teaching and coaching, but this spring she put on a different hat, coordinating relief efforts for families hurt by the flooding.
They can't go back down there again. It's just too much.
10 families total at Fremont Mills needed to move during March's flood. The number seems small, but not for this community.
We know these students on a personal basis and their families, and it was devastating to see what these families were going through.
Our community did a great job. They put together a fish fry or a crawfish boil. Lots of fundraisers, lots of work being done to try to make sure people and students get back to their homes.
And what's really impressive for a lot of these families that have gone through so much over the last 6 months, not a single family moved away from the Fremont Mills School District because their house was destroyed by flooding and they had to go to another school.
They have ties here, number one. Number two, I think once again, it's home for a lot of these families and they don't want to leave it.
While those families may have new homes, they have a community at the school who's supporting them through this period.
I think Southwest Iowa as a whole is like this, and we take care of each other, and that's why it's so important.
Reporting in Tabor, Iowa, Phil Bergman, 3 News Now.
I've just seen, not only firsthand, but close friends and family struggle with substance use. We have the opportunity at this point to demystify.
Andrea Party has been an anesthesiologist for 15 years. She's making a career change as UNMC's first addiction medicine fellow.
Use my knowledge as an anesthesiologist and pain control and pain issues and things like that, and marry that with patients that perhaps have substance use disorder to help them recover and to help them get back, the lives that they once led.
Only 15% of people actually access treatment for addictions. UNMC thinks that's partially because we don't have enough professionals.
Grow it through family medicine, through internal medicine, emergency physicians, and to really begin to grow that workforce capacity.
While one trainee a year who will be board certified in the area of addiction medicine may not sound like a lot, it becomes a train the trainer kind of model.
Starting a fellowship program isn't easy. UNMC says funding is its biggest challenge. That's where this partnership comes in. Nebraska is the first state to seek permission to use part of its $2 million SAMHSA grant to improve the workforce.
This is not a crisis that you can arrest your way out of. And one of the clear messages that we all were committed to at the outset was that treatment was the key.
Pardee isn't sure where her year-long fellowship is going to take her.
I'm just kind of waiting for my life to unfold and to kind of give me that direction with God's help.
And help change the stigma surrounding substance use disorders. In Omaha, Stephanie Nolte, 3 News Now.
Nebraska has just its second day off since fall camp started back on August 2nd. That gave head coach Scott Frost a chance to rest up that throwing shoulder. All kidding aside, the head Husker pleased so far with the quarterbacks who will actually take the snaps this fall.
We're vastly improved at that position from the number 1 guy all the way down the roster. It was a little depressing last year going into certain games with 1, maybe 2 healthy quarterbacks. Noah's been doing really good things. He's throwing the ball as well as I've seen him throw it. Luke's doing some really good things, throwing the ball really well, but also making a bunch of plays with his legs. Bunchy has improved drastically. Matt Masker's making some good plays. I wish the season would come down to a 4x1 relay with our quarterback group against everybody else's because we got some guys that can run.
New developments revealed on a violent pursuit turned deadly in Council Bluffs. The Potawatomi County attorney laid out their case Monday. Troy Peterson and April Montella Roberts led police on an early morning chase after allegedly robbing and murdering 2 men. It turned into a hostage situation that had officers wondering if the threat was legitimate for hours after the chase.
Some discussions went on among the team members about whether or not this was a legitimate hostage situation. They were initially concerned about that. Asked why that was, said she did not appear to be that scared, was number one. That they sometimes would appear almost to be joking with each other, that at one point he had a rifle under her chin.
Peterson and Roberts' pickup truck tipped over taking a sharp turn on Indian Hills Road. Police negotiated with them for hours while trapped in the truck. Uncooperative and unbothered. A drone video shows the two smoking cigarettes and grooming each other while police surrounded them. Officer Damrow, a 9.5-year veteran of Council Bluffs Police Department, was monitoring the scene when he saw something change after a while.
After he had been on scene for about 45 minutes, then he said the scene dramatically changed inside the truck. That all of a sudden Mr. Peterson pulled out a silver revolver and put that revolver to April Roberts' head. And he said that he could tell something had changed, that the look on her face became one of fear.
Officer Damrow took the shot at Peterson, saying he thought Roberts would die if he didn't. The bullet hit Peterson in the head, ending the hostage threat. Officer Damrow is not facing any charges. His story confirmed by numerous officer witnesses.
Officer Damrow observed him put the gun to her head. His observer confirmed what he saw, and their supervisor was standing there with them and confirmed. So you had 3 independent people looking at that information saying, yes, this is a deadly force threat.
In Council Bluffs, Corinna Fuda, 3 News Now.
Have you heard of sharenting? It's a term used to describe the overuse of social media by parents to share content based on their children. While we often hear parents caution their children about safety, this time the tables are turned. In an op-ed, the New York Times talked to 3 children who confronted their mothers about sharenting. Here's a look at one of the kids trying to explain to her mother why oversharing is cause for concern.
I'm Lucy, I'm 7 years old, and my mom posted pictures of me online. That's good. Talk about the photos. This.
What's the big deal? I think you look so cute, and it was a nice moment. What's wrong with it?
Because you didn't ask.
I also think of it as connecting to other people that I know in real life, you know? Like, just think, like, Abu and Grandpa, like, how else do they know about you guys except to see you there?
You can call and FaceTime.
Yeah.
You can do many other stuff to see them instead of social media.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
By age 5, the average kid has 1,500 photos of them online.
If I'd asked you about that picture, would you be okay if I posted it?
Yes.
Oh, really? So it's actually about the asking, not about the picture itself.
And you can watch the entire video with all 3 kids on the New York Times website. Go to nytimes.com/video and search sharenting. So we wanted to know, how should we navigate this with our children? I'm joined now by Nebraska Medicine child psychiatrist Howard Liu. Doctor, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I guess the broad question, I mean, seeing that child being able to explain why she has an issue with this, as parents, should we not be sharing things on social media?
Well, I think it's a fine line, Jennifer, and this really is a conversation about privacy that's probably happening in every household in the U.S. Around this time, it's about back to school times, and so a lot of people are sharing on Facebook, Instagram, good photos of themselves and their kids. And I don't think there's a whole lot of harm with that. I think the challenge is sometimes when kids perceive that there's oversharing by their parents, photos that might be seen as embarrassing, or maybe could cause them to be teased by peers or things like that. That might be more of a concern.
So is there a time when maybe we should give the kids veto power, I guess? And at what age can they really understand that?
Yeah, I think it's probably around the age that they are having their own accounts, you know, and trying to think about, what is the brand I want to put out there to the world, starting with my family and my friends. I think for the earlier kids, they are just experimenting, and they really need to follow their parents' guidance on that. And all of us in our families have probably different rules around that. But I think with all kids, they often don't have a same sense of permanence that we think of with an image. So, I think they might think sometimes, well, I'm just put it out there and it'll be gone. But as you know, with many of these social media sites, the images will persist and last a long time and often are very difficult to remove.
Yeah, and this video did talk about some of the cybersecurity elements of that, how it's not necessarily secure or safe, and that there can be identity theft, that you're actually giving information out to people. Psychiatrists, you're speaking on a different part of this, but in terms of what we share about our kids, can we also be sharing things that may be harmful to them, or maybe it's not appropriate to be sharing about children online?
Sure. So I think beyond the security pieces, you probably don't want to share their birthdays. You probably don't want to share your address. You may not want to share the specific school, some of those pieces. Kids also get bullied, both in real life and also online, for a variety of things. And so things that might seem very affectionate, a nickname, a funny video where they did something that wasn't too flattering, might seem very harmless, but maybe it could cause them to be teased by their peers. So I think talking with them is probably the best sense of what's safe and what's probably a bit more challenging.
And is that talking with them point, is that the biggest key when we start talking about children having their own accounts? How do you navigate that piece of it as a parent? That's tough.
That's a really tough decision. There's probably some individual changes within each family when they make that decision. On the pro side, people talk about safety, about having a mobile phone, a smartphone, which you don't always have to have social media on, to just be able to call and check in to see where you are. But for getting on, I think it's really about boundaries. How do you feel about your boundaries? Are you able to choose and make selections with good judgment about what should be out there and probably what shouldn't be seen by both your friends and also strangers out there, or even parents of your friends?
Six months. That's how long city officials say it will take on average for people to find out if the city will pay for car repairs involving potholes. The city's claims department says they have been working nonstop ever since the mayor announced the city would start approving these claims. We talked to the city's department about the mayor's decision and the impact it's having on our city's resources. For years, if your tire popped on a pothole, you had to pay for it.
We have never paid claims for potholes, and the law is behind us with that.
But all that changed on March 18th.
I felt that it was a year that we had some extraordinary circumstances, and when we do, we take some extraordinary measures.
Not only for the drivers who hit the potholes.
I was like, finally, okay.
But also the city's legal department.
Well, we didn't know how many claims that we were going to get after the announcement.
Before the mayor's announcement, 59 claims had been filed against the city. Assistant City Attorney Jeff Bloom says that number is now up to about 2,300.
I would say that for the parts of the department that are responsible for claims, it's been taking up the majority of their time.
In 2018, the city had about 100 claims, adding up to about 800 pages of paperwork. So far this year, we're looking at about 11,000 pages, and it's getting bigger every day.
I don't know the exact number, but we have been receiving a steady number of probably 15 to 20 per week.
Bloom says each of those claims takes about 2 hours.
2 hours for each claim. We're looking at a few thousand claims. That's 4,000 hours. What does that mean for the city?
Well, I mean, we're using current city employees. So, I mean, it's not specifically costing us more money in that regard. We have people reassigned.
That includes moving 2 police officers to the claims department, something the city has never done.
I made the decision, and I gave the direction to start paying the claims to the law department.
Did the legal department express concern about this policy change for January 1st through March 18th as far as the magnitude or the amount of work this would require?
For what it's worth, I mean, we knew what to expect as far as, after we didn't know the exact number as far as that's concerned, but we knew that there would be some some reaction to that. As far as expressing concern, we frequently have conversations with the mayor as far as about decisions that are made, and with that, basically, I'm certain that she knows as far as our opinion on that, and we know her opinion on things.
What is the legal department's opinion?
I don't think the legal department really has an opinion. As far as our job here is to basically protect the legal interests of the city.
At last check, the city had closed a little more than 400 of the 2,000 plus claims. That's less than 20% of the claims, and they're getting more every day. Tomorrow morning, we'll be taking a look at the most common reason the city is denying those claims.
Schools in the Fremont School District started back up today, and we wanted to take a look at another flood-affected community as students head back to school. Washington Elementary's population was one of the worst hit groups in Fremont. Of the 300 students, more than half of the families were displaced for at least a night by March's floods. 500 families in the district were displaced. Only 2 families left the school due to flooding, but they're remaining in the district.
Their fear is real, and so the teachers, we really had to balance and still have to balance trying to meet their educational needs while attending to their emotional needs as well.
The district says resources are available for students struggling from the floods. They've received donations from food to clothing to counselors for those kids.
Like snowflakes, no 2 potholes are the same. But all of these pothole pictures have 2 things in common. First, drivers like Paige Peterson and Sue Ann Witt say the potholes damaged their cars.
You can see it's about a yard wide.
Secondly, the city denied them all for the same reason. Nebraska Statute 13-910. It essentially states the city must know about a road defect and be given a reasonable amount of time to fix it. For several years, the city has used this statute to deny almost all of its claims. But after years of never approving a pothole claim, the mayor said the city was going to start paying.
We never said we were going to pay every claim. We said they had to follow our criteria.
We're looking in the database and seeing that those claims have reported potholes right before the incident happened.
You would probably have to give us this very specific claim that you were talking about.
We sent the city a list of several people's cases, including some where the city's own database seemed to suggest it was aware of the potholes in areas for weeks.
What was the threshold for deciding that?
Well, I think that the threshold, here's the thing. It wasn't, whenever we send a letter out, we don't necessarily put all of the reasons as far as on the reasons why we denied the claim. As far as we put probably the main reason that we denied the claim.
After emailing the city our findings, we asked how someone could get denied when they appeared to meet all the requirements listed in the mayor's press release. Assistant City Attorney Jeff Bloom responded they would no longer be able to address questions in regard to individual pothole claims.
We felt disappointed, like it might have been a bait and switch.
According to the city's database, on February 26th, a pothole was reported on 72nd Street. 17 days later, Witt hit a pothole 100 feet down the road from there.
It's just like, we're going to give you hope, and then we're going to crash your hopes, kind of a thing. So
I feel like they've let me down.
We searched the pothole database and found an address matching the intersection Peterson reported the pothole. That report was issued almost 2 weeks before Peterson's incident, but the city said that didn't count because the caller who reported the pothole told the city it was in the eastbound lane and Peterson was traveling westbound.
I just think it's an excuse, and I don't trust anything really that they're saying.
I don't think it's an excuse at all. It's following our criteria. We have never paid claims for potholes.
it just makes me feel sad that we can't trust those kinds of statements that are made by our politicians.
While Witt drives off angry and disappointed, Peterson is stuck.
I don't know what to do at this point. I just know that I need my car.
A single mother putting herself through school. Peterson's car hasn't left her mother's driveway since it hit the pothole.
I've been here just waiting.
And unless the city changes its mind,
please help me fix my car.
Peterson's car isn't moving anytime soon.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Griswold. Your trash pickup is on the line for the next several years. City Council members hear from the public on what they want in their waste collection. Senior reporter Jake Wazakowski explains why the mayor doesn't feel the lowest bid is the best.
All summer, city leaders have battled over who will pick up Omaha's trash. The City Council hears from the public and those involved with the Metro's waste collection. Two major bidders are in line, FCC and WCS. WCS came in with a lower bid for a 3-card system, which would have separate trash, recycling, and yard waste bins. But the Public Works Department and Mayor believe FCC is the best for the job with a 2-card system that would co-mingle trash and yard waste. Recycling will be picked up every other week.
The Public Works Department is not in a position to recommend a company that may or may not be able to provide the services necessary to meet the responsibility of protecting public health and sanitation of our residents. We must recommend the company that we know will deliver this essential service all of the time under all conditions.
Residents were mostly in opposition of commingling the yard waste with the trash because of the impact on the environment.
OTOC's Environmental Sustainability Action Team urges you to select a solid waste contract that does not send yard waste to the landfill.
It strikes me as inappropriate that a city the size of Omaha should even consider not having a recycling program and a yard waste program. It's very short-sighted.
Council members weighed the 3-card system and 2-card plan. Mayor Stothert says she'll veto if they approve WCS.
But because of them rejecting it the first time, we've done a lot since then. We put a separate yard waste bid out, got those numbers back. I still feel very strongly that with those numbers, FCC is the best.
The City Council decides that they will wait to make a decision until August 27th. That will likely coincide with a possible ordinance, if approved, that FCC would actually collect yard waste for 8 to 12 weeks during the spring and summer. Both of those decisions, again, would be made in 2 weeks. Reporting in downtown Omaha, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now.
Multiple high school and college-age students told the council Tuesday that recycling needs to be a priority in the next budget, and that young people are watching.
It is an incentive for young people to stay in Omaha for schooling and careers when they see a pattern of environmentally sustainable action.
The city will take bids for a new recycling contract in the coming months, and due to rising recycling costs, they'll have to pay more than the last contract, something these young folks call a no-brainer.
No one wants to live in a place that values profit over people.
In the proposed budget was the addition of another housing inspector to help with the city's newly expanded rental housing inspection program. Those that pushed for the program were back in the chambers Tuesday night, arguing instead to add 4 inspectors.
One inspector won't get us there, nor would 4, but fully funding the ordinance with 4 new inspectors would show that they are starting on a process of fundamental change.
But others at the meeting were asking for more cuts. That includes Doug Kagan with Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom.
Eliminate funding for holiday lighting, community development support, neighborhood alliance support, and a truancy prevention program, among others. These entities can subsist on private contributions and grants. Finally,
a dangerous viral disease that affects horses and cattle has made its way into Nebraska. Reporter Ruta Olsenaida has more on what you can do to keep your animals safe.
American Legacy Complex in Omaha offers riding lessons, training, and birthday party celebrations. They're keeping busy.
There's a little snack.
This equestrian facility houses over 30 horses. Their health and safety is of vital concern.
Extremely important.
Especially now, because a case of a dangerous viral disease called vesicular stomatitis, or VS, has now been confirmed in Nebraska.
All possible precautions will be taken.
Easily transmitted nose-to-nose or through infected insects, the disease affects horses and cattle, creating painful blister-like lesions that may stop the animal from being active or eating.
You know, you bring one horse in with it, it's easily transmitted, they can all get it.
Linda Whitesize says that the disease is too dangerous for her horses.
You stay ahead of it.
She's not taking any chances.
I personally have decided I will not travel to horse shows to avoid coming in to a possible horse that has come down with it.
And with the Nebraska State Fair kicking off in just about a week, restrictions will be in place to keep incoming horses and other Nebraska horses safe.
They require those horses going to the state fair needs to be looked at 48 hours prior to coming on the ground.
They all have to have their health certificates. There will be vets on board to examine every horse before it is allowed to be stalled there.
Because the cost,
Blake is 13. He just became a teenager.
Is just too great.
He'll be fine.
Reporting in Omaha, Rudolph Sinaida, 3 News Now.
The Huskers returning to practice today after taking yesterday off. The last time we talked to the Big Red, head coach Scott Frost expressing some concern about possibly too much physicality in practice, but the defense taking that as a compliment.
It's the want-to by everyone. You know, we want to be the best, and when you want to be the best, you don't want to practice slow. You want to practice fast. So, but Coach Frost loves that. He's happy that this year, what he's telling us is, oh, whoa, calm down. Not, oh, come on, guys, let's go. You know, even as a defense, you want some dogs over there, and I think that's what we bring every day.
Everybody's buying in. You know, everybody's not that I have to get to the league person. Is we have to get to the league person now. You know, everybody has that dream of going to the NFL, but that's not what it's about right now. It's about, you know, Nebraska football, and while you're here, you need to give it your all.
In a large majority of the city's denial letters, officials listed it was not given a reasonable amount of time to respond to reported potholes, something the mayor never listed in her new policy as a factor for approving pothole claims. Well, today we're looking at another reason officials are not paying people for damages and talking to one woman who says the city lied to her.
I heard it go, and this tire completely went out.
But it felt like more like a crater in the street.
Shelby Shull and Mia Rose Lawrence are both students.
I live off of financial loans.
They both hit potholes and filed claims against the city.
I started driving off and heard a noise and realized the back tire was slowly leaking air.
They were also both denied because of the names on their car titles.
The car my parents bought for me when I was 17 years old, and just in the process of finishing high school, going to college, moving around a lot for that, it just never made sense for us to take the time to do it.
In addition to people like Shull, who have the same last name as their parents who are on the title, married couples were also denied if their significant other was on the title instead.
We do need to figure out if they are the owner or they are the lessee of the vehicle, just to make sure that they are in fact the party who was damaged by the pothole claim.
This is taxpayer dollars. This is Omaha taxpayer dollars that we are paying these claims, and we better be careful with how we are investigating and paying those out.
The city says this is a requirement because of fraud concerns, but nothing on the city's website or in the mayor's press release stated the actual owner of the vehicle had to file the claim. It wasn't until several weeks after people like Lawrence and Shull filed their claims that they received a letter back requesting a copy of their registration or title. But here's where their stories differ. Shull got a letter saying she was denied because her name didn't match the title, but the city didn't tell Lawrence her title was the problem. Instead, the city said it was not given a reasonable amount of time to respond to the pothole.
Here's the thing. It wasn't, whenever we send a letter out, we don't necessarily put all of the reasons as far as on the reasons why we denied the claim.
After finding several reports of potholes in the city's own database prior to Lawrence's incident, we emailed Assistant City Attorney Jeff Bloom our findings. He responded reasonable time was not a factor in Lawrence's claim, even though that was the only reason listed on her letter.
That's interesting. That's not okay. I don't know. That's ridiculous.
When we asked Bloom for an explanation, he declined to provide any more information on individual claims.
Well, they lied. I mean, they didn't ask for any additional information, and that's something they should have done rather than just denying me.
Different roads.
The cost of repairing my car was almost 2 months of what my rent would be.
With the same disappointing end.
I think it just came down to a technicality, and it was something they can get away with.
These students say the city failed them. If you received a denial letter stating the city was not given a reasonable amount of time to respond to the pothole you hit, go to our website. See for yourself when the pothole was reported, how many people reported it, and how long it took the city to fix it. You can find all of that on our website at 3newsnow.com.
One after another, they spoke up.
With more inspectors and staff, we can ensure that a man with disabilities does not have to wait 2 months for his landlord to fix a broken window in the middle of winter.
Telling the city they want to hire 4 inspectors next year. Not one, like the city is planning to do.
It's truly astounding that the mayor's new budget now only provides for 1 additional inspector. This program seems designed to fail.
Mayor Stothert responded Wednesday.
That is just not true.
Saying over the next few years, the focus will be on targeting the properties already with code violations. Then in 2020, mandatory, proactive inspections will begin on 15% of the multifamily units in the city.
I'm not going to budget positions and pay for positions that aren't needed.
Last year at this time, the city just had 6 housing inspectors. Now they have 9. And the plan will be to add 1 next year, then 4 inspectors over the next 2 years, to ultimately get to 14 inspectors by 2022.
We are taking our time and setting this program up very carefully, very strategically. We put a lot of thought and a lot of time into it. We're setting it up for success.
Planning Director Dave Fanslaw says they're already interviewing candidates for the open inspector gig, but hiring 4 people for next year is just unnecessary.
One of the last things I want to do is hire 4 or 5 new people January 2020 and then not have them, keep them busy and not have work for them.
Lee Wolin represents most farmers in Nebraska, hardworking, selfless, and dedicated. As a 4th-generation farmer, he wants you to take away one thing. It was something he had to learn the hard way 20 years ago. Rudolph Sinida has more on the Wilcox farm.
Being a farmer is a family affair.
It's a good life.
It seems like you're doing a million things at once.
Cultivating a field one day in the morning and then in the afternoon hauling corn.
Lee Wolin is a farmer through and through.
My great-grandfather homesteaded in 1889, and so I think I'm the 4th generation.
So he knows a thing or two about the craft. When he was younger, Lee and his siblings would constantly be helping out on the family farm. 20 years ago, Lee and his siblings were doing their rounds. But this time was different. It's a day Lee will never forget.
That's where we found him, under the corn, was in that area.
An accident that changed Lee's life.
It was hard.
His 15-year-old brother.
I didn't check on him. I just went to the co-op.
Suffocating in one of the family grain bins.
Started moving corn down with the scoop, and that's when his foot came up out of the corn.
And there's a lot of kids that end up becoming grain bin fatalities also. So if you look at it, I grew up in kind of a rural setting, so I climbed on the tractors, climbed on the grain bins, I climbed on the hay bales. To me, it was just a playground. I didn't realize the dangers. So to other kids out there, they're gonna look at it the same way. So being able to educate your children, you know, it's never too early to start educating them on the dangers of farm operations.
And these accidents are not that uncommon.
Flowing grain is just like quicksand. Really all it takes is 2 to 3 seconds for that grain to start flowing around you before it starts getting difficult to get out of.
20 years later, Lee wants to use his tragedy
just to help people slow down and take the extra 30 seconds to check on the person you're working with.
To prevent future accidents.
It was a hard learning lesson that I don't want anybody else to have to learn.
It would have made Alex very proud.
Maybe I can help save somebody's life and make a difference.
Reporting in Wilcox, Rudolph Sinida, 3 News Now.
Back to school is a time when many families are in need of things like school supplies, but also food. The Bellevue Housing Authority is part of a little program making a big difference for those in need. But donations are low right now, and they're asking for some help. It's not the typical place to find a food pantry.
We try to keep it stocked regularly with things that people might need.
Those items include things like canned goods and other popular foods.
Sometimes we have beef broth, we have macaroni and cheese, potatoes, we have tuna. Peanut butter and jelly always goes over well.
And the philosophy for this free food pantry is simple.
Or take what you need and leave what you can.
Monica Battriel with the Bellevue Public Housing Authority helps maintain this little free food pantry. But for the last 5 months, they've needed some help.
We've been struggling to keep it loaded since about March.
Since that time, the community has been busy helping in other areas, meaning this local food source isn't as full as it once was.
After the flood, there was such a need for other things in the community that, you know, our pantry just we keep it stocked here within the office and friends and family members, and we just need a really good food drive to kind of keep us going through the winter.
With August winding down, now's a time when people might need a few food items to help get them through the month.
Usually right around the 22nd, 23rd, things start going a lot faster and we see more turnover in it.
The Housing Authority wants to build more of these in Bellevue, but now they have to wait.
We have 2 free pantries that are ready to be set up in 2 different locations, but I don't want to put them out without having the stock to cover them.
So they are looking for donations to help cover not only the rest of this month, but for other months down the road, for people who need it the most.
Food items for children seems to be a big thing this time of year. Dinner meal kits, you know, things where they can make a whole meal with it. We try to bag those. Sometimes we keep those in here on the shelf, so if they come in and maybe they're paying the rent or someone says, I'm in need of something, then we can say we have it.
And the Housing Authority says they have another case like the pantry outside they need help building. If you want to help, reach out to them for more information.
This was what we had left here, and we started with something that looked more like that.
Chris Thompson, owner of the Game Room near 72nd and Dodge, says his shelves aren't stocked like they used to be. Items stolen right off them. From June to July, he says games and consoles worth upwards of $50,000 were stolen in a series of thefts.
It's hard to watch your business be affected because of things outside of your direct control.
Police arrest both 19-year-old Anthony Rodriguez, a former employee of Gamers, and 33-year-old Philip Williams, a current Gamers employee and former Game Room worker, for felony theft. This month, OPD issues a search warrant at Gamers' Lincoln location, finding 5 stolen systems. Rodriguez told police the Gamers owner, David Mitchell, had him steal the goods to sell at their Lincoln location. Mitchell says he had nothing to do with it.
So for someone to make up a lie and portray me like that and to try to throw dirt on my name when this is something that I speak out against.
And David says the former employee would come at strategic times throughout the day, seeing different employees selling games or consoles, but also went through all the security checks, including having a photo taken, ID checked, a thumbprint scan, as well as a signature to document exactly what was sold and have that information for law enforcement.
It definitely hit me hard. Like, it definitely hurt me, like, because this is a person who I trusted.
Police say Williams used a key to break into Game Room and was about to steal items when confronted.
To me, it was like really surprising, and I spoke to him multiple times to say, hey, are these accusations true? And he was able to tell me no. Like, what we would want people to know about Gamers is that we're a family-friendly environment.
Thompson wants the gaming community to know how much they want to continue to serve them.
What we really want is to be able to compete fairly, and the reputation that I believe we've earned, I think we should get to enjoy that.
Reporting in Omaha, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now.
I'm back out here. I'm going to keep your cup.
Crystal Moore runs this daycare out of her home. The kids know her as Crystal. To others around town, she's almost unrecognizable.
It does make me kind of get emotional when I see this because like I can't imagine letting myself go that far.
Crystal showed me some of her old clothes she made because she couldn't buy them in a store.
I had to go to a excavating place at one point to weigh myself. I'd have them weigh the truck, and then I'd get in the truck and weigh me, and that would tell me what I weighed because the scales wouldn't weigh me.
Her weight had always been an issue. Fending for her own food since she was a kid, vegetables were never part of her diet.
I would say fried food was a big thing. To-go food, pizza, hamburgers. Not really meaning to, I became very large. I reached a high weight of 452.
In the fall of 2016, Crystal was diagnosed with breast cancer. The one problem, to get a biopsy, you had to weigh less than 350 pounds. Crystal weighed too much, meaning she needed to lose weight in order to get the treatment.
I was real concerned because we really couldn't tell, or we couldn't find out just how aggressive or how far it had spread until they were able to do the biopsies.
Had I not lost that weight or they could access that, I don't think they would have found it.
33 radiation treatments and a partial mastectomy later, and Crystal was cancer-free. Over the next 18 months, she lost 220 pounds, doing so strictly off diet, pills, and family support.
I lost the weight that I have, I think, because of determination, because I have somebody at home that supports me.
This past year, the weight loss organization TOPS named Crystal its Nebraska Queen, meaning that she lost more weight than any other TOPS member in the entire state. Her goal now? Continue to inspire others to make positive changes to their health and diet.
Through my success, I hope to encourage somebody that's 59 years old to say, hey, you can still lose weight. I thought you couldn't after you're 40 years old, and I'm now 62.
Reporting in Lincoln, Phil Bergman, 3 News Now.
There we go. There we go. Good morning.
It's the first day of school for Omaha Public School students.
How you doing, Matt?
Okay, I think it'll be good. She's excited. I think it's a good place to be at.
For mom, Erin Billings, this warm welcome was just what her kindergartner needed on her first day of school. For nearly 8 years now, Omaha Black Men United have welcomed students back to school for the Million Fathers March.
The effort is designed to have fathers come into the schools so that they can become an integral part of their child's education.
Fathers, grandfathers, uncles, mentors, and father figures all made sure students were excited to begin a new school year.
We do this work because we care about families, we care about moms, we care about children, we care about communities.
A message echoed by Mount View Elementary School principal Meg Searle.
We want parents to understand that we want the positive experience for their children, so we need them as partners in that education so that their kids understand how important they think school is.
The men tell us they look forward to seeing kids' faces every year, and parents say they appreciate the effort.
Welcome back. Good morning.
Smiles.
Good morning.
And happy. They don't smile like that at home.
I think it's very encouraging and to have that open, welcoming feeling for those kids when they come in.
First year. Give me a big high five, dude. Oh, good job.
In Omaha, Sydney Gray, 3 News Now.
Rural health care across the country is in crisis. Facilities are closing left and right. Here in Nebraska, many are running on a razor-thin budget. One has closed in the last 5 years. Investigative reporter Jeff Van Sant looked into what's happening and joins us live with more. Jeff?
Yeah, healthcare is a complex issue. Over the last 10 years, policies and funding changes have hit rural healthcare centers hard. Some of these facilities have been running in the red, others barely making a profit.
The grapes are loving it right now.
Wine is something Max McFarland loves. It's a passion.
Well, this is a French-American hybrid that grows quite well out here. A lot of green grapes. Those are going to be red here in about 2 weeks.
His wine, Max Creek, sells across the state. His vineyard is in the small town of Lexington.
It's 80-some degrees in the daytime and 60-some degrees at night. And, you know, tongue-in-cheek, we say that's Napa weather.
Mac's dreams nearly came to an end some years back.
I woke up and I felt some discomfort and some pressure in my chest, and I thought I had pulled a muscle.
It was much worse, a heart attack. Luckily, a hospital is just 5 minutes away.
And I mean, everybody just clicked like a well-oiled machine.
Max got the care he needed, surviving his ordeal. He thanks the Lexington Regional Health Center for his survival.
It was just phenomenal, and if I hadn't been within 5 minutes of that place, I wouldn't be talking to you today.
Every second counts in an emergency. In Lexington, it's a community of about 10,000 people. Its biggest employer is this meatpacking plant. This hospital is the sole provider for this rural community. The nearest comparable facility is more than 30 miles away, so you can see its importance for this area is unquestionable.
We're a critical access hospital, and we have 25 beds.
Leslie Marsh is the chief executive officer.
We see a lot of, trauma from the ag world, from industrial accidents.
In smaller hospitals like this, the staff have to be a jack of all trades.
Hi, Crystal.
Dr. Francisca Acosta Carlson always has her hands full, ready for a call to come in at any hour.
It's busy and definitely can be surprising some days because you never know what's going to come across. And depending on what I'm doing, I mean, it could be in the emergency room, it could be in the hospital, it could be in the clinic.
For a hospital with such a big job, when it comes to the budget, it's a struggle.
We're just barely, making it. This year we'll have our positive margin, a slightly positive margin, not even 1%.
This after several years of running in the red.
We're not making a lot of money, but we have to meet our operational costs.
This story of a rural health center struggling isn't unique.
Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really seen a downturn in the operating margins of those rural hospitals in Nebraska.
John Roberts is the head of the Nebraska Rural Health Association. He says one facility has closed in the state in the last 5 years. Nebraska is faring better than other states across the country.
Some states have really been decimated. Tennessee has lost 12. Georgia's lost about 8. In addition to that, we've got about 700 that we would classify as financially stressed.
The uptick in closures is the result of several factors, including declining populations, federal sequestration of more than 2% across the board, and changes in Medicaid and Medicare under the Affordable Care Act.
They cut about $350 billion from hospitals and physicians to pay for that new expanded coverage. Medicaid expansion was supposed to kind of offset it because you'd have more people that were insured. And so the thought was there'd be less uninsured and charity care for hospitals.
According to the Nebraska Rural Health Association, there's 71 rural health care facilities in the state. 39 are running on an operating margin of just 2%. 29 are running in the red. And the trend is getting worse.
I've challenged some of the administrators to reassess their business plan. Just doing things the way they've always done them before and depending on Medicaid rates to rise enough to pay for that probably isn't good enough today.
State Senator Matt Williams, along with other state leaders, are working towards helping these rural facilities.
I'm hopeful that we can improve the provider rates for Medicaid a little bit, but creating other programs right now with our budget shortfalls are certainly problematic.
Some politicians in Nebraska and Iowa are trying to cut through some of the regulations that increase costs for rural health facilities, but nothing is set in stone. As for a facility like Lexington Regional Health Center, its leadership knows Washington politics can change at any moment, from funding to regulations. They have to keep all this in mind to keep their facility afloat. As we learned with Max, if he hadn't have had the health care access that he had, he wouldn't be here. But today, he's expanding his business, adding a brewery, and the thought of losing a critical access hospital so close is terrifying.
It would be catastrophic to our community, the whole area here, I think. Not only, sure, it employs a lot of people and all that, the economics of the thing, but, we are at least 45 minutes away from a larger hospital, and that's about 40 more minutes than I probably had.
Now, next week, we travel to a tiny town of Binkelman, a community of just over 900 people. Their critical access hospital is the main employer in town. It's a budget so tight, it needs donations to keep operating. Reporting in the studio, Jeff Van Sant, 3 News Now.
Early Thursday morning, family and friends gathered outside this Gretna home.
I'm just going to fiercely try to keep her memory alive so nobody forgets, or my kids, or anyone else who she was.
Since losing her 16-year-old daughter Addison in a crash, Wendy Pfeiffer says she's been dreading the first day of school all summer.
She was super excited to go and be an upperclassman. She had a lot of good, fun things planned that she was looking forward to.
To keep her daughter's memory alive, Pfeiffer invited friends, family, and former teammates over for donuts before they headed off to school.
It's just going to be different for the rest of high school, because you won't see all of them walking in the halls and laughing in class, and it's just going to be really different than how it has been before.
Liliana Canan says she and Addison had known each other their entire lives.
She just loved making people laugh, and she was just friends with everyone. She could go into any group at school and just talk, and she would be welcome there.
Notes filled with memories of Addison covered the hood of her blue Chevy Impala. And friends reminisced about the times spent together.
I don't want her to be just like a lesson to people, you know, like a lesson or an example or whatever, you know, like people often say. I just want her to be remembered for, you know, who she was.
And on days like this, Wendy says it's those firsts that hurt the most.
It's all the firsts that are hard that I keep saying. Like, she was our first kid, and so she usually takes us through all the firsts, and now we're doing all these firsts without her.
And before everyone left for school,
1, 2, 3.
blue balloons filled the air in memory of the Gretna Four. As the school year goes on, this community is sure to remain Gretna strong. In Gretna, Sydney Gray, 3 News Now.
It takes an instant to make a driver feel like there's nothing they can do.
There it goes.
To stop from being hit by things from an unsecured load. In a 4-year span, AAA estimated 200,000 crashes were caused by debris on U.S. roads.
They do occur quite a bit, probably more than what you think.
Lieutenant Michael Grummert with the Nebraska State Patrol says all the time, high speeds cause loose items to fly into traffic. On his way to this interview, he pulled 3 large pieces of siding off the interstate.
The extremes, we've had bricks fall off of semis before where you have huge dents inside of the vehicles, and then you obviously you have people swerving to try to miss the debris that's in the roadway and possibly causing other accidents that way.
NSP says they've seen it all, and something you can clearly see is 2x4s, pieces of furniture, PVC piping, as well as metal sheets, but all the way down to the smallest. Gravel bouncing up and damaging or putting a pit in your windshield, also considered an unsecure load. Lieutenant Grummert says loose gravel is the most common thing. They ticket violators if they're able to track them down. The fine, $100. More than anything, Grummert hopes people will secure their loads for the safety of others.
If you're transporting stuff from from point A to point B, just kind of test it out to make sure it's going to stay on either your trailer or the back of your truck and that type of stuff, and just make sure that's properly secured. You take a few minor steps, it could save, causing damage to somebody else's vehicle or causing an accident.
Reporting for Safe Roads Now, Jake Wozakowski, 3 News Now.
You can find our Safe Roads Now coverage on our website, 3newsnow.com/news/Safe Roads Now. Be sure to tell us how distracted drivers are affecting you.
This is the view you have when you try to look out at Jean Leahy Mall. Blocks of blacked out fencing, with viewing holes giving you a taste of the progress and what they're currently working on.
The thing that right now has been the most labor intensive would be some of the work that you're seeing right now.
That includes filling in where the lagoon used to be. For that, they need a lot of dirt and time.
So that's something that will take 93,000 cubic yards of dirt to bring that up to street level. That's 9,300 dump truck loads.
So far, they've removed the pedestrian bridges, demolished them all from 11th to 14th Street, and brought dirt to street level from 13th to 14th. Work is going well enough, they now plan to close down Heartland of America Park in the fall, something they weren't planning on doing until early next year.
And that's just because the team's moving along well. They think that they can tackle that part of the project.
And those huge chunks of limestone from the mall aren't just trash. Instead, they repurposed them here at Hummel Park to replace their amphitheater seating.
Previously, they had used concrete blocks and 2x4s for seats for day campers, and hundreds of kids use that camp every year. Now, they have brand new limestone seating that looks much nicer.
It'll be a 2-shot.
And for those curious, the famous slides are going to stay. They're simply just figuring out what to put around them. Reporting in studio, John Kipper, 3 News Now.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, there it is.
With a round of applause, NFL legend and former Iowa Hawkeye Tim Dwight made the first legal sports bet in Council Bluffs.
In terms of something really new and exciting, this has been the big one in the last 20 years.
Earlier today, Zach showed us around.
These are our odds boards. Right now we have one set for futures bets, one for college football.
Ameristar turned this sports bar into Council Bluffs' first sports book.
So when it became possible that it would be legal across the country, I figured it was just a matter of time before they wanted to offer it to Iowans.
Scrolling on the television screens are everything from college football futures to MLB odds.
It's the standard stuff, money line, point spread, over under.
Terms like these may be like a foreign language to some, but something you might not expect has helped betting terms become more mainstream.
The rise of fantasy football has really turned people on to point spreads and to money lines and over and unders and everything. They really are educated on that a lot more than they were 5 or 10 years ago.
Sports gambling's been controversial in the past. People against legalizing sports gambling say that it leads to higher rates of addiction and gambling at casinos, while supporters of sports gambling say that it gets the money out of the bookies' hands and into legalized gaming authorities.
It's a safer bet to come in and a regulated, state-controlled, legal alternative. I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of states are legalizing that.
Bets for now are sticking to the basics, but with in-mobile gambling and in-game betting coming soon, the possibilities are endless when it comes to where and what sports fans can put their money on.
It'll give you something to do a little bit more during the game, keep folks engaged. It'll be a way to draw some folks out to watch the game that maybe normally would watch it at home. It's going to be a madhouse, a good one though.
Ameristar right now is the only casino here in Council Bluffs that is open. However, Harrah's and the Horseshoe will open up next week for legalized sports gambling. So college football fans will have tons of options to be able to place bets. The first bet here at Ameristar was $100 on the Chicago Bears winning the Super Bowl at 20-1 odds.
Sounds like people there are excited about this. So what are people betting on?
Yeah, so people right now can bet on a lot of different things. A lot of NFL preseason football tonight, Major League Baseball. You can pick on college football, who's going to win the national championships, and also things such as the Heisman. That's what's known as a futures bet. You can't do in-game betting yet. We'll touch on that in a little later, but so far it seems like a lot of national titles, Super Bowls, and then just the daily wagers.
You just mentioned it. So in-game betting and mobile betting, how do those things work for people who aren't familiar with this?
Yeah, so mobile betting is actually really fascinating. I learned a lot about it today. What they do is they are able to geo-check you on your phone, and it shows where you are geographically. And so if you're inside the state boundary of Iowa, you can actually place a bet on your phone once you set it up with the casino. However, that's not set up yet. They're going to try to set that up in the next few months. But basically on a college football Saturday, people in Omaha could drive literally across the border, place a bet, never go into a casino, and drive right back across. As well, they're looking to add an in-game betting where you can bet on, let's just say, who makes a first down, who scores a touchdown in the game, what you think a play is going to be. However, inside the state of Iowa, you're not allowed to bet on Iowa-specific players or Iowa state-specific players, and that's a rule in the Iowa legislature.
So Phil, when it comes to gambling, some people are against it because of gambling addiction. It can be very serious. What are they doing to help people out if that's an issue?
Yeah, so one thing we wanted to touch on with the people here at Ameristar is the dangers of gambling, because it can be very addictive. We're just seeing people drop hundreds of dollars already on this first day, and they're aware of this, and they say that they keep track of who is known to be a big gambler, who's been kicked out of casinos in the past. And all throughout the casino, they had these sports betting flyers or little pamphlets that talks about what you can do if sports gambling's become a problem. Obviously, it costs $45,000 to get this sports betting license. None of these casinos want to get them taken away from them, so they're definitely going to make sure that the bettors make smart bets and don't get addicted.
While many are looking for natural options for their pets, many are turning to CBD oil. Some say it's helped their dogs way more than medication could. Others say more research is needed.
One treat.
This is Callie.
She's usually pretty friendly.
You wouldn't know it, but this 7-year-old pit bull mix has gone through some health issues, including after her owner, Mike Martinez, made a discovery 3 years ago.
We noticed a tumor over here on her side, so we took her to the vet, got it tested, and it was a cancerous mast cell tumor.
Vets removed the tumor. Then Martinez was given the option of medication afterwards, but instead decided to try CBD.
We've been doing that as a daily regimen for 3 years now. And since then, we haven't seen any sort of tumor growth.
Martinez credits CBD oil, which comes from the flowers or buds of marijuana or hemp plants, as a natural remedy to help his dog.
It's better, in my opinion, than giving them a pill and then ending up with some sort of other negative effect from that pill that you have to now counteract with another pill.
Martinez isn't the only one turning to a more natural option, as one store in Omaha sells a bunch of CBD pet-related products.
CBD is more organically grown naturally, so if you want to go that route instead of the pills and other side effects that come with pills, Organically grown is just safe.
Haley Crosby of Leavenworth Coffee says the products also help with other issues pets can have.
CBD oil really helps with anxiety and seizures for the most part. So separation anxiety most dogs have.
Or anxiety that can be caused by loud noises like fireworks. And while the usage of pet CBD products continues to grow, some vets think more research needs to follow suit.
There's no real regulation on them. We don't have any information about whether they are safe and how they work with other medications. But we also don't have any information that says that they're not safe.
But Martinez will continue to give Callie CBD and says if you're not interested in giving your dog medication, consider this option.
I've literally seen no sort of negative side effects from CBD.
In Omaha, John Madden, 3 News Now.
Floodwaters threatened to wash away a popular summer festival in Bellevue.
It did force some changes, but this year's Riverfest is back and it starts today.
Now, 3 News Now reporter Corinne Fuda joins us with a look at what it's taken to get things ready. Corinne?
Working every day since Tuesday to set up, Bellevue still found a way to keep Riverfest alive despite the flooding and setbacks they came across. The festival is usually held at Hayworth Park, but Bellevue leaders changed it to American Heroes Park. They're expecting to see up to 30,000 to 40,000 people this weekend. The Bellevue Chamber of Commerce says Riverfest is a way to give back to the community and get the city together, especially this year when the floods took so much away from people.
So with the floods, it was kind of a convenient time to move it over to this park. And moving it over here is kind of actually a blessing. But with the flood, it had such an impact, whether you had the competition barbecue, we couldn't hold it at the campsite, as well as some of the other amenities that we would have in here. So American Hero Park actually, with its improvements, is a better venue for us.
The city says they always wanted to hold Riverfest at this park, but faced delays along the way, not only with flooding, but with renovation at American Heroes Park. Everything had to be rushed, and they are so glad they made everything work on time. The event starts today at 5 p.m. and goes on until Sunday night, and tickets are only $1. In studio, Corinne Fuda, 3 News Now, this morning. Dropping about 50 feet from above.
Came down on a hard landing. When the helicopter impacted on the ground, it caused it to turn over on its side.
The Omaha Police Department chopper completely wrecked, but the pilots on board are okay.
The 2 pilots in the helicopter, thankfully, they have very minor injuries. They're both walking, talking, they're fine.
Coming in to land at the Blair Municipal Airport at around 9:45 this morning, police tell us the engine of the Able 1 chopper lost power, taking a plunge onto the runway. Now officials are working to investigate the cause of the engine power loss, which may take months. The FAA and the NTSB already contacted.
It's a beautiful day out. The weather doesn't seem to have any impact on this.
The 2 officers in the helicopter identified as Brian Ugatfam, a 12-year veteran, and Matt Bauman, a 14-year veteran. This isn't the first close call for Bauman.
Yes, it was. He was in the other incident.
On April 17th, Bauman was on a different OPD chopper that experienced mechanical failure just after taking off and was forced to make an emergency landing in a field. No one was injured in that crash either. Reporting in Blair, Corinne Fuda, 3 News Now.
Scary. It was not intended for this much traffic.
Welcome to one of the scariest intersections in the Omaha Metro.
Well, I wouldn't ride my bicycle on it, and I do a lot of bicycle riding, and I refuse to get on that thing because there's just too much traffic now.
84th and Platteview meet at a crossroad here. From this overhead view from SkyTracker 3, you can see what makes it so dangerous.
There's limited sight distance if you have a truck that pulls out a little too far when they're making the right turn, and sometimes people just get a little impatient. Over the last year and a half, we've had 2 fatalities at the location.
On Friday, temporary stop signs were put in place.
This is the early portion we're in right now. We've got a lot of work to do yet.
But how dangerous can this road actually be? We decided to head into the 3 News Now tracker and drive along the road ourselves to see what it looks like as we pull up to the stop sign. As you pull up to the sign, everything looks fine, but as we look to the left, you notice that you can't really see the cars too much because of the blind turn coming up ahead.
There's way too much truck traffic on it. All of a sudden, the trucks that are coming through here are cutting through on Platteview over to Highway 34 and across to the interstate.
The county's looking to drop the speed limit from 55 to 45 miles per hour from here until 132nd Street. Roundabouts are out of the discussion.
You couldn't have one of the large rural roundabouts located there. It just would not fit well with it.
The ultimate plan is an expressway, 2 lanes with a widened side and a median.
In the multiple millions of dollars, possibly upwards of $100 million.
Where that money will come from, no one really knows right now. Reporting in Papillion, Phil Bergman, 3 News Now.
Commercial vehicle safety is a top priority for Nebraska state troopers. Good evening, I'm Jennifer Griswold. A recent deadly crash has troopers making sure vehicles and drivers are following the law. Senior reporter Jake Wazakowski tells us how it's keeping all of us safe.
A surprise stop.
We'll get this going so we can get you on the road.
For commercial vehicles that may not normally be checked.
4-way flashers.
Looking at engines, brakes,
honk your horn,
loads, and driver qualifications.
Go ahead and fire it up so you can get
The State Patrol checks dozens of vehicles in all shapes and sizes along Highway 370.
Part of our job today is education. Part of it is enforcement. But we're trying to contact drivers, vehicles, and companies that might not normally come in contact with the State Patrol and carrier enforcement.
The Sarpy County Sheriff's Office asked NSP to help with the inspections after 10-year-old Stephen Young and 16-year-old Abby Young were killed when their van was rear-ended by a dump truck on Highway 370 this month.
We felt it was really important to, as school starts here and as traffic continues to be heavy along 370 and in other areas in Sarpy County, to get out here and take a look at the vehicles and try to make a splash, you might say.
Troopers say they found equipment not secured, drivers without proper credentials, and most common, drivers using their cell phones.
And as you can see, some drivers have had to actually leave their trailers because the State Patrol says that the drivers weren't qualified or didn't have the proper license to haul the equipment.
Deb Thomas has been a commercial driver for years.
The only violation is not being able to find that current register or periodic inspection form.
Okay.
And is glad authorities are doing the random checks.
That's your copy there.
It's very necessary. All the accidents and everything that's going on. Yep. Just to be safe. Everything has to be up to date, and they all should be up to date. You see a few out there that are not. You know they're not, but there's nothing you can do.
Troopers want drivers to make sure they're qualified, put down the cell phones, and make sure your equipment is in working order for the safety of everyone. For Safe Roads Now, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now.
We've been talking about potholes since winter. This week, we showed you a series of 3 stories about claims and the city's response. Morning anchor Courtney Johns joins me now to talk more about what she's learned covering potholes. Courtney, thanks so much for coming in to talk about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So when did you start tracking these claims?
Oh gosh, so we started tracking the database as far as people filing pothole complaints in February, I want to say. And then we started asking for the claims themselves, the things that people are filing, asking for reimbursement in March.
And throughout all these stories, you've talked a lot about reasons why people had their claims denied for fixes to their cars after they were damaged by potholes. Reading through these denial letters, what are some of the more common reasons they were denied?
So one of the stories that we touched on was a statute that the city of Omaha has used countless times before, which essentially says that the city needs a reasonable amount of time to respond to a pothole. So they need to know about the pothole before you hit it, and then they determine what a reasonable amount of time is for that. Some of the other things we covered was, is your name on the title? We had students who maybe their parents' name was on the title, so they were denied for that reason. There were also issues with people not being within city limits, maybe someone filing a claim about a highway. There were also people who didn't give specific streets, or they would not specific intersections, so they would just give a street, and the city needed more specifics on that. And then there were a few claims, it was really interesting, where the city looked at the car's condition itself and said, this isn't caused, or it's likely not caused by a pothole. This looks like regular maintenance, or your car's really old, and this probably would have happened either way. So a variety of reasons, but the main one is citing that reasonable amount of time statute.
And it sounds like we were talking about it. There's
Right.
some confusion with that, of how that statute works. What is the meaning of that language there?
So it's really interesting because a lot of the people I talked to who were denied, who did their research, didn't seem to understand themselves what that meant. So the reasonable amount of time statute, it's not how quickly did the city respond to a pothole complaint? It's when did the city know, and did they know before you hit that pothole? So if the city knew on Friday, but your incident happened Thursday, it doesn't matter. They couldn't have fixed it without knowing about it.
So some of that is just understanding the language of all of that.
Right.
You've done a lot of this. So if you would like to see all of Courtney's coverage on the potholes in Omaha, go to 3newsnow.com. You can also see these stories through any streaming service. Courtney, thank you so much for coming in.